Yeah, 100%. So and it's actually funny, like Ollie, like I felt we spoke to, I felt it could have been 2 years, honestly, since I like that's the feeling I have from when we because just so many things have happened with the product and with the company and everything. Been very lucky to grow, in terms of a lot of new employees, and at least since when we last spoke, Ollie, I think we've gone from like 40 operators using the tool to now more than 80, even though now more and more of these companies are merging. So like, Apache and Callan was companies that, or both companies that subscribe to the software. I guess they were one now. Same with Southwestern and Chesapeake. We are kind of double dipped with both of those guys. And I guess you guys picked up the Chesapeake the acreage as well. But a little bit of background on the software product that, if you want to have kind of the one slide overview of what Whitson Plus is. It's a all-in-one solution that's you can access on the web for everything decline, PVT, bottom hole pressures, RTAs there, simulation, nodal, and unconventional well tests. So this, keep in mind that this is like with an unconventional hat on. What do I mean by that? It means that even though you can probably use a lot of this for conventional wells, it's primarily kind of assuming that you have a lot of wells and that those wells are hydraulically fracked in some capacity, single frac or multiple fracks. That's at least how most of the core reservoir workflows are kind of built around that assumption. So that's Whitson Plus in a nutshell for you. Our goal long term has always been to be the bridge between reservoir and production. So we don't really like to talk about it as like an RTA tool because now if I did that, I love RTA, but I will start to offend some other colleagues. So that's what it's our goal, and we've seen that more and more of the clients that we're bringing onto the platform now is production engineers, for instance, that's doing nodal. It's people doing well tests. There's reserve people doing decline, etc. And that we think we're pretty early on that journey, but that's the long-term goal. One of the most popular kind of enablers for, why I think we've gotten the adoption we've gotten in just 3 years since the software was started to be developed is how easy it is to connect with the software from like an IT perspective. There's one of my friends love to say that, petroleum engineers or engineers in the oil and gas industry, they use the tools where their data is in. So, and we see that like we have 80 plus companies that work with us. I think we have probably 75 of them up with like an API connection, and the adoption and usage for those companies is way higher than the ones that has to load the manually or the data in manually, which you obviously can do. So our most popular workflow, which you mentioned a couple of thousand wells. I'm not really worried about that well count. I think that's very, very doable. We have, honestly, we have companies with tens of thousands of wells in the software connected up. But Devon is probably a good example where they have 5,000-6,000 well bores that's being updated every single night with new production data and connected to WellView when you get new well bore information data there, and also tons of other Eagle Ford companies as well that is in the same boat, if you like. So our most popular workflow is to connect production data and artificial lift and well bore data with the cloud integration of choice, whether that's our external API, which is getting better and better every single. It's almost like its own product, has a product owner, releases, etc., or Snowflake, where we, at least in our niche, it seems like we were the first kind of vendor that supported a Snowflake connection. So now we do that with a ton of companies. Just in the Eagle Ford, you have companies like Marathon. We do it with Devon. SM Energy is actually good for HANA, also with Snowflake, but that's I can probably count on a couple of hands because that requires them to also have Snowflake as a vendor, I guess. But the end result for the user is the same. You have automatic production data uploaded, and you have automatic bottom hole pressure calculated for every single well, which is the two ingredients you need to do RTA, but also to do flow material balance, numerical modeling, nodal analysis, you name it. And again, like why is bottom hole pressure so important? Well, it's used for a wide range of different analysis, and this is just some of it, and it's probably more as well. I mentioned that we wrote the first line of code to the product a little bit more than 3 years ago, and since then we've been able to now get more than 80 companies using the tool, something we were really, really proud of. This is not necessarily to kind of brag, well, we're so getting so wild adoption, but it's more a security thing for you guys, I think. Just like we're here to stay in some capacity. Last year there was not a single company that didn't renew our product, and most of the companies that we had worked with for 2 years, they actually signed a 3-year agreement with us for the next 3 years. And we put all the money back into hiring more people that supports the software in terms of developers, which has been what we've been growing the most in terms of the headcount and internally. So that's been very important for us. I'll show you the software, and we try to make the software pretty simple. What we mean by that is not only simple to use, but also simple for us to interact with you guys as a client. What does that mean? Well, it means that it's one product. So we don't modularize the tool. We don't give you one price for our forecast piece, or one price for a reservoir piece, or one price for our kind of nodal or optimization piece, and one for our well test piece. Everything is one price, and our price is not really secret either. So I'm happy to share what it will be for you guys in a follow-up email as well. But that's very important. It's one price for unlimited number of users, so we never restrict seat count. So how many, if you guys grow, you double the team, I would love to see that happen. And you grow to other basins and stuff like this, it's the same price. And there's no blockers for adding more users, which has been also very, very important for us, actually, because we would like more people to get their hands on the software to provide feedback so the software can become better. So I think that's also been a key ingredient. And all of this is in one interface, so you don't have to spin up a wide range of desktop applications. It's just one, hopefully seamless workflow on the web that I'll try to show you guys that you can access with single sign-on. What is single sign-on? Just means that you can log in with your Outlook credentials, basically. Just go to, for you guys, it will be, I call it INEOS. I don't know, because that's what it's called in Norway, but I don't know what the English word is. Christy, help me out there.
Single for what?
For like, how do you pronounce the company name? I call it INEOS, but it's
we debate that. It's INEOS.
INEOS. Okay.
We actually just say the same thing our founder says, Jim Radcliffe. If he calls it INEOS, then we got to call it INEOS. I used to call it INEOS. That's like really American butchered, but it's, whatever Jim says.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds great. Anyways, so you will have that domain .wits.com. You'll log in with a single click, and you're off to the races. So I have a lot of focus now, and I mentioned a lot of stuff about the tool, but the tool is not our most important deliverable. Our most important deliverable is our support, which our goal is at least to have the best support in the industry. What does that mean if you want to quantify it? Well, we have on average less than 2 minutes response time, and it's not like we have a support team that is overseas or something like this. Who is doing support? Well, it's me. It's our COO, which we are the 2 product owners, and the rest of the software team, actually. So for us, it's very important to be intimate with the client, so we actually know all the time what is the most important priority of functionality to get into the software. And we also code as well on the tool. So that is just another thing we like to emphasize. The last thing I'll mention this also in a follow-up email that you get as a 100% complimentary to this is working with us, is every year we have rolling virtual courses that all the subscribers can join on dedicated topics. So if you and I'll show that just real quick. If you went to wits.com /training like this, you'll see all the software courses that you get complimentary access to on the PVT part of Wits and Plus, which I'll talk more about, the bottom of pressure part, the analytical and numerical RTA part, flow material balance, nodal, well test, and the DCA and type walls part of the stuff. And here we're at, as we were adding more functionality. Last year we didn't have nodal, so can have a nodal course type of thing, but we were adding more functionality and then more courses that's dedicated like this. And they're typically really popular, more than 100 participants typically in these. And that goes in addition to, of course, if you need in-house training in Denver, happy to come up there and do some training. And now we actually have our first hire in Denver, actually, that does a lot of work with our Denver clients, which is good.
Yeah, so Matthias, with that, yeah, like I'll be the first to say I'm definitely not an expert in RTA and don't have a ton of experience with it in the past. So I think we'd be really mindful of how do we get really running with this software, knowing that maybe we're not experts in that, and how to set us up for success, knowing that maybe there isn't the courses that we need aren't scheduled at maybe the time that we need them or quickly enough. Is that what you were going to say, Christy?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, 100%. So when it comes to catering for that, we're extremely flexible. These courses, they're just like the public courses are rolling every year. They're actually recorded as well, in addition to everything that's in our manual and of course one-on-one chats that you can set up whenever you want. And there's one thing on this before I think maybe Christy had a comment that is related to the knowledge sharing sessions. So we have 3 knowledge sharing sessions per year. Where we just invite different operators to come in and present on different topics in the tool. And that's been something that I know the community has appreciated a lot. 2 of those are virtual, and one of them is in person in Houston, or it's hybrid. You can join either in person or virtual. So last year we called it WitCon, and last year was like full day event with 150 people in person, 80 companies, and then online it was like 200 plus companies as well, and that's also included as a part of the subscription with us. Christy, do you have a question there?
Yeah, if you could just go back to your training there. So I think that's great that you have some training. Is it more are those trainings more focused on how to do the activity in the tool, or do you get into actually the theoretical? Like, I just wasn't too sure if you also offer some training as part of people's subscription or onboarding, where, like, to Ali's point, he's not like, he's not an RTA expert. Do you guys offer where your experts will actually do some training of our folks on, the reason why I say this is because like Harmony, those guys will train you all day long on like not just how to use their tool, but like, you've got experts out there to actually teach you about RTA a little bit better. Is that something you guys offer?
Yeah, 100%. So we actually reach out. We do it every year, like for in-house courses. If people would like to have in-house courses on different topics, can be RTA, can be nodal, can be well test. That we also do on demand. If and based on, like, let's say a company had suddenly a new team because they have a new asset, or they've been having a lot of turnaround and they need people to be trained on the basics. We do that. I would say one thing that's very important in these courses, we go through the theory pretty in detail. And then we apply it in practice on real data in the software in the same course. So that's we're trying to do both in those courses.
Okay. And is that all included kind of in the annual licensing fee there, Matthias?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
The in-house training as well, Matthias?
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's just an on-demand thing, and that's something we've done. Never charged for it as long as I've been in the company, and we're not gonna start with it either. So
awesome.
Yeah, so that's been important for us to, the training is actually a part for us. We get a lot of value out of it as well because we learn from the users. It can be a novice user, and I'm telling the guys all the time, like we are not like an RTA expert is not our base customer. We are people who've never done RTA is more of our bread and butter right now. If you look at the number of users and stuff, they're wanting to learn and they want to try out using this to evaluate well performance and these things. So that's very important for us. Very good. I actually have a little bit of kind of like what's new in the RTA space type of spiel, but I'll skip that part and primarily go over to the demo where I'm going to show you guys a kind of the core reservoir engineering workflow in the software. And I'm sure if you've used, I call it the green software before, you'll probably see that some parts are shamelessly similar. And then there's a couple of differences that I think would be important to highlight. And it's a 5-step workflow, with the PVT being the first one, the bottom of pressure being the second one, and then the flow material balance, RTA, and then you end up with like a numerical model and forecast. This is for a single well, but we also have multi-well models and these things. But I'll try to focus on that, not to make it a information overload. There are two things that that's unique and different for Witsum Plus is that the PBT is done extremely rigorous with what's called an equation of state model. So what we do there in basins like all the basins in North America, we have these different equation of state models. Maybe Repsol was actually a part of the Eagle Ford Austin Chalk equation of state, for instance, and it's allowing us to be. You can think about it as you're building a field-specific correlation that you can use for all the fluids that exist in that basin: black oils, volatile oils, near critical fluids, condensates, wet gases and dry gases. And why is that important? Well, it's important because all the published correlations that you have out there, they are only valid, like standing correlation, for instance, is valid up to 1,000 scf per barrel. And if you've been in the Eagle Ford, most of the stuff is higher than 1,000 scf per barrel. I don't know about your acreage, but if you have the low GOR stuff, it's probably similar to using a correlation. But then it doesn't matter. It will be very similar to using an equation of state. So this has been a very, very important building block for us that we also offer the clients to join in on, like in a consortium format, if you like, and that will fuel that first step. And I'll show how you do that a little bit later. And then our second other thing, like technical piece, is that the numerical model is actually a full physics numerical model. What does that mean? It means that it's not a hybrid model, but it's actually an equivalent to Eclipse, T-Navigator, Intersect, Sensor, OPM Flow, those full physics simulators. It's still extremely fast. It takes a couple of seconds to run, like 1,000 days. But that's also a difference than what you would maybe see in the green software, which is, in all honesty, that's our only competitor really in practice, and where I see at least 80% of the companies we work with are switching from that to working with us. What you'll see in the software is, which is also a little bit different, is that there's a little bit more of a top-down type of call it mindset, and that the workflow is a little bit more set, I think, than maybe in some other tools. I think some other tools will allow you to do a lot of flexibility where you almost have to build your workflow yourself, where we have taken the approach that we like, where we think it is justifiable, let's remove optionality for the user to not come into this like, option where you get like drained mentally because there's so many options. So we're trying to kind of make some of those decisions for you. And for a well, as I'll show you now, you just start at the top and you move your way down and you end up in the numerical model. So 5 steps in a web-based software. That's everything that I'm going to show. So since I already have a web browser up here, when I switch now, everybody can see the browser, right? Just give a thumbs up. Or yeah, perfect. So for you guys, this would be your domain. I haven't set it up yet, so I need to use the internal domain, but at least it starts with an I, so similar. And then the way the software is structured is that we've structured the software into different fields, and also under each field you will have different projects, and under each project you'll have different files. Right now, can everybody see kind of like a little view with some fields on? Perfect. Now what I'll do is that I'm doing this. I just click F11 and you go full screen. That's something you can do in any browser. So if I want to do some work on a well, I'm going to pick an Eagle Ford well. I just need to come to my field and I need to go into my relevant project. And then I just need to find the well that I'm going to do some work on, which is going to be this kite well. And this kite well is a public well from the SPE data repository that's been provided by Blossing Game in that group. So that's why I can use it, but it's real data. And as I mentioned, the workflow starts here at the top left, and you just move your way down and you end up in a numerical model. And it's thoughtfully placed out like this because you need PVT before you, for instance, do flow material balance. And you need bottom hole pressures before you do RTA and numerical RTA and numerical modeling. So that the order should hopefully make sense. At least I think so. So in the first step, your job as a user is to use one of these methods, these PVT methods that we have in the software. I'll start with the simplest one, which is the GOR method. That just basically asks you as a user, take this well, the production data from this well, Here it's automatically zoomed into the first 100 days, but eventually it goes below the saturation pressure and GOR goes up. And then pick the GOR that you think is in situ representative. You can do that by dragging and dropping, or I can go in here and put in a number. So if I made this 1500, you'll see that's connected with that line right here. I'm like a round number type of guy. I like it simple. I'll just blame that on being Norwegian. So when I'm done here, click save, and then the software predicts a fluid composition for me all the way up to C30. Uses that to create the space envelope and automatically create these tables that you actually can go and export into any third-party tool, even the green software, or it's used automatically everywhere inside of the software where you need PVT properties. And these are fully modified Blackwell tables, so they would generate exactly the same results for primary depletion as if you ran these simulation models compositionally. So if you were running GEM or Eclipse 300 or stuff like this. Behind the scenes, it's one of these field-wide equation of state models that's being run. There are default models in the software. You can upload your own, or you can upload the ones that you get access to through the consortiums. And that's the PVT piece. If you had more data, now you're basically done. I'm done with the PVT step. So step one is check. But if you're done with it, and if you're happy with it, or if you have other data, let's say you have the full-blown fluid composition from a PVT report, you can actually import that directly as well, or if you had other sources. So this is just a function of how much data you have available. Good. Step one. Step two, in this case, I've already uploaded some production data, but if you wanted to upload it manually, it's literally just clicking here up to the right. An equivalent to Excel is going to open in your browser, and you can just copy paste from Excel if you want to do that. And that's what I call it the old school way. I don't know if that's fair, but now we have Spencer and folks like him. So here, ideally, you have the API connection connected. The beautiful thing then, which is how most of the companies that use the software is doing, is that your date on the last data point here would be 12th of January 2024 type of thing. But there's also a mass upload option. So if you want to do it kind of the semi-automated way, you can populate like in a big Excel sheet and upload like 200 wells at a time. But I think with having an IT team and stuff like this, it's going to be a breeze to set up the API. In the RTA workflow, I like to do decline, but I'll not spend too much time on it here because we wanted to chat about the RTA piece, but it has exports to all the standard reserves tools. I don't know which tools you guys are using. It has multi-segment auto fits, all the different phases, and you can. I like to compare it to my RTA results, but not everybody likes to do that. But that's my preference. So step two in the workflow, optimal pressure piece. What do we really do there? Well, we take your wellbore deviation survey, your perforated interval, and the differences in wellbore configurations over time, together with the production data, and we calculate what would the bottom pressures be. The wellbore data here, initially it's flowing through tubing, and then we're actually getting gas lift. The software supports all kinds of flow path, casing, tubing, analyst, tubing and analyst. Gas lift can be gas lift, ESP, rod pump and plunger, and the valves are pour buoy, reverse gas lift. Can also take all the valves versus depth. If you actually had the gas lift gas lift tally, we can actually account for that versus depth. So question to you guys, what's the most common artificial lift method you guys have?
Probably either gas lift or rods.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So I mentioned already, gas lift, ESP, rod pump and plunger, and you can do it through the flowing side or the quiet side as we see. And this is something we ever become. It's kind of like, I'll be honest with you because I like to be honest. It's like, I developed it, like when we started to develop it, we actually only had the PVT part to begin with, and we were so proud of it. And then we were like, yeah, let's get the numerical model in. But the reality is that most of the companies that work with us, they initiate to work with us to automate their bottom pressures on every single well using this. So that is kind of the crown jewel of the software as of right now, and it's lightning fast. And what we do is that we calculate 4 different correlations at the same time. So how do you actually tell the software which correlation you're supposed to use? Well, that's something you do here at the top, where you say, okay, bottom hole pressure to be used in calculations. So that's all the different features for this well that is below the bottom hole pressure stage. That's basically what we're talking about here. So if let's say I said, okay, I would like to use Hagen and Brown, and I went to the numerical model, and I say, okay, what's being imported here, that's my Hagen and Brown. And if I changed this to, for instance, gray here, then what's being imported into the numerical model would be gray that we have right here. So that's kind of where you pick what's the truth here. And here we always recommend people to, if you have a few wells with gauge data, try to, do that little exercise first before you go and pick the standard default correlation to use on all the wells. What you can also do if you want to be fancy is to actually tune your correlations to gauge data and use those tuned correlations on the wells where you don't have PV or where you don't have gauge data. Yeah, I want to mention that. Last thing on the second step is probably the most popular feature we have in the tool. It's a way for you to smooth the data. Again, not super technical, but it's so popular and honest. Like I've saved 2 years of my life with this feature because I did this in Excel previously. And what it allows you to do is that it just allows you to auto-fit the underlying data like this. And if you save it, you can then use that custom smoothed bottom hole pressure curve over time as the input to your model. So if I now went down to a numerical model, I'll now have the smoothed custom bottom hole pressure where you have removed a little bit of noise. Typically, there's a lot of noise when there's bad water readings, for instance. So now we have pressure, you have PVT, and you have production data. And now you're ready to roll on everything RTA. The first thing of the RTA piece is something called a flowing material balance. Does someone know the difference between the flowing material balance and the RTA piece?
Maybe could you just step through it for all of our benefit here?
One more time? Yeah. I'll step through it real quick. Yeah, 100%. So the difference with the flowing material balance technique, and so RTA tries to do two things. It tries to quantify two different productivity terms. So I'm going to go through that quick. But so RTA, if you want to learn RTA in 2 slides, I promise you, these are the only 2 slides you need. You need to know the flow regimes, where that initial flow regime is infinite acting flow. Then you haven't felt any of the reservoir boundaries. And the total opposite extreme of that is boundary dominated flow. That starts as a pressure response that affected all the reservoir boundaries. And then in between here, we have what we call transitional flow. We've seen one of the reservoir boundaries, but not all of them. So that's the flow regimes. And then what you can obtain from RTA is only 2 things. And that's what a lot of people forget many times. There's 2 things, and there are 2 productivity terms. The first one is the A root K term. Some people call that the linear flow parameter, or the LFP. So A root K is just the surface area generated during completion multiplied with the square root of permeability. And the second thing is your contacted pore volume. So that contacted OGIP or the contacted oil inputs. A root K correlates with short-term production. Contacted pore volume correlates with EUR because the definition of EUR is the contacted pore volume multiplied with recovery factor. And you can only quantify A root K if you observe infinite acting linear flow, and you need to be in full boundary dominated flow to get this guy. So the difference between RTA and a flow material balance, you can say that a flow material balance is a subgroup of RTA, and the only thing that you're trying to do in a flow material balance is accounting, and that's to try to find out how big is your size tank. So your flowing material balance is only dealing with this one guy to the right here. So the flow material balance we have in the software is a new flow material balance from Cortera Cimarex that doesn't require rel perms, outputs the contacted pore volume, does not care about geometry. And like any of these tank size models, you assume boundary dominated flow. So if you're still infinite acting or transitional, it will be a conservative estimate, where you use this diagnostic plot right here, where the inverse of that slope that you're trying to fit, the shallowest slope on the diagnostic plot, is your pore volume. So this is a small OIP, big OIP, and this is an even bigger OIP. So if I went into the software now for this well, and I looked at this diagnostic plot, you can see that up to the left here, this is my estimate of the contacted pore volume. This contacted pore volume is inversely proportional to this line right here. So if I make this line, let's say 400, well, what should happen? Well, it should get steeper, right? If I make it 1600, it gets shallower, and something around 800 MSdB was a good estimate for at least the shallowest portion of this well. Here it's probably still an infinite act. And then I like to keep that in the back of my mind before I go in to do the RTA. The analytical RTA is exactly what you're used to seeing in the green software. And that's also why we have it there. It's great because it calculates your rate normalized pressures and pressure normalized rates, and you use it primarily for diagnostics. You can also use it to derive some properties. Here, I would like to just be mindful that these generate numbers. Those numbers won't really be very accurate because they do not account for multi-phase flow effects or superposition effects, that combination. So that's why we use something called numerical RTA, which I'll get to. But it's great for diagnostics as well. Right here, for instance, you might see that we're having a period of quarter slope, and then it goes to an infinite acting kind of linear flow slope, and then eventually it looks like it goes into boundary dominated flow. And then we can see if that's the same in numerical RTA. Fundamentally, if you've used the square root of time plot before, and I'm going to zoom a little bit in for this, the outputs, as I talked about, it's two things. It's your A root K, and it's your contacted pore volume. Here, you're probably used to hearing the term end of linear flow. Well, end of linear flow, that's what dictates your pore volume. So the slope here is what gives me my A root K. So if I change that, my A root K is changing, right? And then the time to end of linear flow, if I had that set, the shorter it is, the smaller the contacted pore volume is, and the longer I put it out in time, the bigger it is. So that's how that's connected. Numerical RTA is just a different way of doing the same thing, but you account for all the three phases, and you account rigorously for superposition. And that's what you call numerical RTA. It's been big the last 3 years. Honestly, the first clients we had, it was because they were excited about this technology. And instead of that slope, you have this dashed line right here. When I move that dashed line up and down, that controls my root K. And then the other thing you have is that you have a wide range of these type curves that's also generated numerically. And the closest type curve to your data, that is what you will pick as your OIP. So what have you done? You picked your A root K and you picked your contacted pore volume. That's what you have up here. So now I have the two outputs from RTA, and I can also make some assumptions of fracture half length, the number of fractures and stuff, and resolve, for instance, the permeability and XF. But I already know that I'll get a perfect history match in my numerical model. Why do I know that? Well, my combination of A root K and contacted pore volume gives me this cum fit in numerical RTA. And since I'm already running something numerical and I bring it into the numerical model, which is my last step, I'll by definition need to get a perfect match. So when I bring this into my numerical model, which is my absolute final step right here, you see that my cums for hydrocarbons are basically spot on. The same goes for the GORs. Also, the bottom of pressures are very, very good. And for water, I've just tried to match the stabilized water cut because we haven't injected any of the water that is completion water into the model. The absolute last step you can do if you are interested is to add the forecast piece. Here you can do that in one or multiple segments if you like. I think a lot of people like to do this to 10,000 days. So you can do that if you like to. And there's also sensitivities, probabilistics runs as well, which are really popular probabilistic workflows where you get to numerically P10s, P90s, P50s type of thing, which is also used a lot as a base of that kind of core reservoir workflow. Probably, you can kind of do what they call a probabilistic history match, but I think there is also a lot of people that use it for areas where they want to do like an infill well, or if there's more of like an exploration area where they don't have too many analogs as well. So without I know I always talk too much. That's what my girlfriend says. So I've got to stop here and then to not make it an overload. Here you see the case with the forecast and everything that I just ran, where you just appended this forecast piece right. Any questions?
Other than the basic stuff that you explained, what are some of your large clientele base? Where are they finding the most value out of using this? Are they using it to kind of do the analysis of depletion, and of course are they using it to try to help the effects of certain spacings and how the the OIP is changing with respect to how they're basically developing their wells over time?
Yeah, no, that's excellent. So, my interpretation will be that's a question directly related to the RTA piece of the software. So I'll try to answer it in that context. So if you look at how our clients are getting a lot of value out of RTA, I think just the simplest thing, which you don't even have to run a model for it. It's to, in a fair way, consistently compare wells that's been drawn down with very different drawdown strategies.
Yeah.
And you convert them to pressure normalized rate versus time, or rate normalized pressure versus time. You put them on the same plot, and at least you're on a pressure basis comparing like for like. So that's comparing productivity on a fair basis. That's probably the simplest, most used takeaway. For that, you need automatic bottom pressures, obviously. So we've even seen some of our clients now building even type curves and type wells using pressure normalized rates instead of rates. So that's very exciting. So I don't know if it's rigorous science-wise, but at least it accounts for that pressure piece, and I think we'll see more to that. So that's kind of the simplest thing. If you take that one step further, being able to rank wells where you quantify their productivity, which is really what RTA is about, where you can rank on ARID-K, which is the early time productivity, and not only and also the long term productivity number, which is oil in place. That's kind of like a second tier of it, and from there it starts to become like and that I think is like almost every reservoir engineer's job, right? Quantify the productivity, which wells it's about. But from there, it starts to get more what I like to call exotic. So there you have in the Eagle Ford, we do a lot of studies related to drawdown management, especially on the gas condensate side. If you have wells with a CGR from 400 and up, or 4,000 and up, how should you draw down that well aggressively or not? To really answer that, you need to have a model that has equational state backed up PBT tables to be able to do that rigorously. So that's very, 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 so that's kind of choke management related. We see a lot of people use it to get more like a simple starting point for more complicated models. Let's say they want to run something in ResFrac or something that takes days, and they would like to have a good base case that at least gives them decent results on the first run, so they don't have to stay there and forever and use up all their calculation credits or whatnot. But then you also have, of course, the well spacing issue, which is on everybody's mind, where it's one of the most exotic uses, I think, of RTA. Where you need to be really, really comfortable with some of the assumptions that you're making, and that's what I talked about when you go from the RTA results, which are quote unquote unique. That's your ARID-K and your contacted pore volume. As long as those are the same, I'll get the same history match, the same forecast. The problem is, like for well spacing, I can if I change my assumption of number of fractures, I make it 100 instead of 300, and my ARID-K and my contacted pore volume is still the same. My history match and forecast will be the same, but now suddenly my perm is not 6 nanodarcy, it is 63. And the same thing with your fracture height, your porosity, etc. So but that's more assumptions going into but if you're comfortable with those assumptions, I've seen a lot of success with that as well. But the people that I've heard that's been burning themselves on RTA, that's been the people who've been like, all my fractures, they're perfect with planar rectangles, that's kind of been what I've been seeing. But
okay. I mean, certainly we got to get the petrophysical data in there correctly, right? Otherwise, garbage in, garbage out. So that point's not lost on me. I just one of the unique challenges that we have here is that we don't have a blank slate of acreage. It's not like we can go and plow through 20 wells all in a row and be confident that we're still doing with original pore pressure and all that good stuff. We've got a challenge that we've got areas of depletion, of varying spacing, of varying completion design. And so, trying to answer questions. I mean, ultimately, this is boiling down to where do we think that we have the highest potential? Where do we think that we actually have areas of depletion? Where do we think we have areas where we haven't actually haven't contacted a lot of the reservoir, or are looking like they were inadequately stimulated or inadequately produced, and just kind of using this tool as a diagnosis to give some visibility into that. As you said, flow back is a big thing where it's like, I hate it. You have one well where you're choked back, you got another well where you knock the wellhead off practically, and it's extremely hard on a DCA basis to determine what is the right number, right? Because you're going to come up with wildly different EURs on those two scenarios. And just so obviously the fundamentals of RTA really help neutralize that impact. But yeah, I was just curious in ways that companies are using it more exotically just because of our particular situation.
Yeah, I will also mention just the one last thing on, I call it exotics. It's not really exotic, but it's like kind of related to the, where you have a geo, your geo team has mapped the in place oil in place numbers,
yes,
right?
Of course. Yes.
And then what you get from your RTA and your flow material balance is what one single well is contacted. So what is very popular and what we've done a lot through the consortiums that we have, the RTA consortiums that we have, is to ask the clients, compare that contacted profile that you get from your well models to what's mapped in place. And that's such a healthy exercise, not only to like talk to your geo team, but also to see, okay, first of all, does that geo model make sense, or vice versa? And also, is there like some areas where that headroom is so large that maybe it makes sense to go in here and be a little bit more aggressive, or maybe we can fill in a couple of more wells here, while this area seems to maybe be the other way around. So that's also a very healthy common exercise to use the RTA piece of work.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, our OIPs are the foundational piece of like, deciding where should we go, where should we drill, and from there it's a little bit of a refinement of making sure we're in the good quality rock, and making sure that we're putting in the right design, and making sure we're doing the right completion to basically maximize our recovery factors, right? So it's in the most economic way possible. I need to put that caveat, since we all have to be mindful of the economics of these things. But it's I mean, it's like knowing that, we having different diagnostic tools to ground truth the ranking of wells, and which, if we've got 200 wells out there, it's like, well, what do we want to put first? And so being able to analyze the offsets and history match them and kind of tie them into our geo models is something that I think we'd want to do, just to raise the confidence level that, what we think the offsets can produce is actually represented by something other than just a decline rate. So
Exactly.
So sorry, I know we're coming up on 11:30, so anyone else feel free to drop off.
I'll have to drop off, but you guys keep going.
And like one use case we're thinking about, Matthias, is like Christy said, when we're coming in and infilling between two wells where there's depletion on both sides, how do we understand what that depletion looks like around the offsets, and how does that help us optimally place the well, and B, how do we forecast that well, given that it's depleted and maybe we don't have the best analogs offsetting it to understand what that depletion is? So that's maybe a workflow I'm trying to understand how we can figure out in here and build into our workflows.
Yeah, 100%. One thing, like, that's a very, very common thing. I would call it kind of in the exotic realm, if you like. So a lot of people use the saturation grids and stuff, like in a single well model, to do that. Like, say you have a single well model and you include some volume beyond the frac tips, and you see, okay, between these two wells, this is this was the initial reservoir pressure. We're planning to fill in a well here. So, if I wanted to modeling on that, I can't use 650, but I'll use, 550, for instance, and run a simulate like a single well model, all the same parameters, maybe change the completion a little bit. And that will be like, okay, my base case for what I think this new well will do. So that's like the quick and dirty way of doing what you're talking about. Then which I didn't come into on purpose, just to not get into rabbit holes. It's our multi-well numerical model, where you can actually have, in a symmetry of element way, multiple wells in the same grid. So this is just a very simple case where you have 3 wells. This is their fracture half length, just one layer model, but you can make as many layers as you like and stuff. And then you can come in, you can run this, you can history match it, and then you can say, okay, at January 12th, 2024, I'm going to put in a new well in between X well and C well, and I'm going to run with it from there. So that is also that's a little bit more rigorous, because then the grid cells around your well has already been, the pressure is there, but it's like not one pressure, it's like a dynamically changing pressure and saturation, because now you'll have higher GORs and all these things, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we can handle all that within Whitson.
Yeah, it's not a, there's some assumptions like, the well, just to make sure that the symmetry of element thing is honored, so your well lateral lengths are the same, fracture connectivity is the same, but like the well spacing thing, I think you will be able to model accurately with that, at least give you as good enough answers as you need for that. If you wanted to go like the full 9 yards, which actually I learned, like when you do the CMG models and stuff like this, they also still only model a stage, right? So even there, they're still using symmetry of elements. So I think this should be sufficient. Yeah.
Matthias, have you guys done work on refrac?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We've done a lot of work on it. We wrote a paper for, and let me just wrote it down so I can get back to you with some information on that. But done a lot of actually refrac evaluations in the Eagleford. So there's kind of two things you need to think about with refracs. Either are you doing the evaluation before the refrac and you want to see like how would a refrac perform on this well? Or is this like evaluating the refrac after the refrac has been done, but you have changing rates and pressures and multi-phase effects all happening at the same time? Is there a tool where you can go in and do that rigorously? For UTEC last year, Devon did 30 Eagleford wells where we evaluated it with the multi-phase flow material balance technique. That's been very, very popular. So you're just looking for changes in pore volume pre and post the refrac. What that change in pore volume should indicate is, if that is an uplift of 30% in contacted pore volume, your EUR should also go up a long-term 30%. And the nice thing there was that they used only 15 days after the refrac to then be able to quantify the long-term refrac potential. So that was very, very successful. And then you have also workflows that they're also listed in the manual of what you can do if you want to do well, we don't have a refrac, but you want to go in, history match a well, double the number of fractures or whatever you want to do, and then evaluate, okay, what is that uplift or refrac uplift potential on this well compared to other wells? And you can do that on as many wells as you like.
Yeah, so I guess that'd be for candidate selection there. That's maybe the screening portion of things on.
Yeah, exactly. So you have kind of two buckets of screen. You guys are, this is your native language, so you're way better with words than myself. But the screening candidate selection process, that's what will be that bucket.
How do you see clients manage that? Because like your frac height and your half length on your original versus your refrac are going to be the most the factors that affect the results you get the most, right? So how do you see people manage that? And because it's not the easiest data to get, right?
No, exactly. So that will be data that you either get from like an analog that you've history matched, post refrac, or that you have done some fracture modeling in like a geomechanic tool if you're using some heuristics. But you're completely right, because there's two things that can really impact a refrac, right? There's or that can add pore volume or performance. And I'll see if I have it here. Yeah. So your old completion, that can be already contacted pore volume. So you need to add H and XF to see new fresh pore volume. And if the fractures that's already there are so far apart that realistically over historical time they won't contribute to production, then the acceleration will actually also be a net increase in reserves. So of course the number of fractures, that's something you control, that's okay. But if you go in there and you put in a new completion that is like anno 2023, then I would maybe history match some basic or 2024 now some 2023 wells. What H and XF are you getting there? Maybe use that as your base case. That's typically what I'm seeing.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then maybe the last question I had is just around DCA. I'm curious how that's improved. I know that
Yeah.
that's something I discussed quite a bit last time. I know you just showed it, but
Yeah.
uh,
Can't remember what the feedback was, but it was a lot.
I remember I sat down with were they in Egypt or were they just Egyptian guys? I forget. I sat down with your colleagues
Yeah.
overseas, and we went through DCA in quite a bit of detail, actually.
Yeah, it was probably Mo. He's
Yeah.
actually from Venezuela, but his parents are Lebanese, so that's probably why.
Okay.
We got the Egyptian
Way
guy.
out. Yeah.
No, but it's close. Egypt and Lebanon is not far. But he's the product owner together with myself. So he's the COO in the company. Since then, I think a lot of things have changed there. Just first of all, in terms of it's been a big focus for us because we've been like forced by all the clients to do a lot of things there. So
Awesome.
and then the like Devon actually has in their contract, they signed a 3-year contract with us now, and they said, okay, we're going to evaluate when August comes or something if all the DCA and typo stuff is good enough to replace existing workflows, and if it is like a different kind of kind of pricing scheme and stuff like this because of that. And that's been a big focus for us. So that's actually the top thing, or one of the top things on our roadmap now, to make sure that goes from like good to great. So we have a release next week, for instance, where I would say probably 10 of the biggest things there is related to the DCA and the DCA and typo. But I can show you real quick here.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing it and just kind of how you would decline in a.
Yeah, the I can do both of them. Do you still see the screen?
Yep.
Yeah. No, perfect. So I think one thing that's changed probably a ton since we had a chat last year is the typewell workflow. That workflow should be really similar to what you're used to if you used green software. There's a couple of edits. It's the map here up to the right. It's a probit plot, and it's these related property tables. But how you change wells, how you start at the beginning of history, etc., how you add your P10, P50, P90. There's some new color by attribute features that wasn't there before, so you can color by anything you want. This is just the default colors right here. You also have yeah, so that was actually a big thing that a lot of people requested. I can't remember if it was one of your requests in terms of the big things and functionalities that you can normalize by custom attribute. So that attributes can be, it doesn't have to be a lateral length and fluid pump and whatnot. You can make some kind of exotic attribute yourself, and then that is your normalization factor when you go from one to another. And obviously, you can still add the forecasts that you've made at the end of history for the wells that you.
I know we chatted about rate cum declines a lot more as well, and how to improve that.
That was what it was
Yeah.
with, right? That was
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I think I don't know if we had the rate cum like view like this back then. But at least that's very, like, I almost do everything in this view right here, which is the rate cum view.
And then it pulls into that plot. Okay, nice. Yeah, this is way different.
Yeah, so this should be way different than what it was. I think you talked about in the green software you have to pick if you do rate cum or if you do rate time, right?
It's harder to go back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. While here we found some consistent ways to kind of do it, so you can go back and forth as you like between the rate cum and of course if you export to Aries and stuff like this, it's always in rate time. But speaking of which reserves tool are you guys using?
We're using combo curve.
Okay, so you're actually using that for reserves too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Do you guys have, like, if we were to decline in here, I know you can export, but can there be an API link by any chance? Like,
that can be an API link for sure.
Okay.
We haven't done it before with Comma Curve, but they have the identical tech stack to us, so I would be very surprised if that would be hard to do.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And then maybe just one last thing on the declining. Can you flip between, like, this looks like daily data. Is that
Yeah.
fair? Can you flip between daily and monthly, or are you just kind of stuck on daily?
Yeah, that's actually a funny thing. Like the Cume is of course in Cume. In time right now, it's just in days there. But it's kind of like it's one of the items that I talked about on the list. Because in Typewell, as you'll see, it's actually in months. So
Okay.
that's a little bit
Yeah.
of an inconsistency. But yeah, so here you see the normalized time is in month. So to be able to, I think most people actually use months though. So yeah, either have a
Yeah, I like flipping back and forth between daily and monthly resolution when declining. So that's just
yeah. So
So
you
Matthias, is that a 30.42 day month then, or is it actual calendar month?
yeah, so that's a good question. So it's whatever 365 divided by 12 is, that number is most likely what's used when you convert from the rates, especially in the normalized time there. So that's the fixed day.
so not to get too in the weeds here, Matthias, but obviously, so let's say we're doing a type well and you're bringing in analogs that you don't have data on internally, so you're just getting embarrassed or whatever data in, but you
Yeah.
want to utilize that in this type well.
Yeah.
How would those get declined in the
Yep.
DCA? Because they generally would only have monthly data, and then how would that translate into the workflow?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think actually the project we're in is monthly data from probably Enerdeck or Prism or Drilling Info. I don't know what you used in Verus, you said?
Prism, yeah.
Prism, yeah. So there's and these are used all the time. They're really popular. I don't know. My feeling is that Enerdeck and Prism, and I feel like Prism is getting more and more popular. At least the clients we work.
Yeah.
But so you just drag and drop them here. That's actually what's being done here. And then you can go and decline all of them at the same time. Here, right now, the controls is a little bit more limited than what we like. So in the next release, you'll see there will be much more control options and whatnot here. But at least you get the decline where you can do it automatically for all the wells, or you can even go in and say, here, I would like to, overwrite this and change this or whatnot if I want to do that. So you can do it kind of semi manually if you like.
And that's so and that's daily, but they're just pulling the points at a monthly increment.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So the software can take any type of resolution, whether it's even like even with DFIT, we have second data and stuff like this. So it doesn't matter what the resolution is, but we always convert it into like a rate per day, for instance.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Gooding. I'll follow up with a few things. Refrag is one of them that I'll do, and then great meeting everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Hannah should probably trademark her name. It sounds like a character from one of the Disney movies. But, Alice in Wonderland probably was a character there. Let's be honest. That was awesome. And if there's anything else that I'll, should I just provide like the quote as well, Ollie? Just
that's what I was just gonna say. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And if there's anything else we can help with, just let us know. And again, I kind of feel like my life is coming full circle, working with kind of not only is it soccer related now, even though it's kind of I'm not a Man U fan, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Awesome.
we'll
Appreciate the time, Matthias.
Appreciate it. Cheers. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Good to meet you.